Welcome to the Acknowledge to Action podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Benko. In this special episode, we revisit a key moment that played a pivotal role in shaping the direction and vision of this very podcast. Originally recorded on February 11, 2022, as part of the Veteran Power Hour on Montco Radio, this conversation between myself and JT Frank, founder of Consequence of Habit, dives deep into the challenges veterans face when transitioning back to civilian life. JT shares his personal journey, the transformative power of mindfulness, and the vital importance of addressing trauma in meaningful ways. This episode underscores the crucial need for support within the veteran community and the collective responsibility we have to help veterans and first responders heal. As you listen, keep in mind that this conversation took place nearly 2.5 years ago, and some event dates mentioned may no longer be current. However, the message remains as relevant as ever, serving as a powerful inspiration for the creation of the Acknowledge to Action podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this impactful reboot of the Veteran Power Hour episode, a true cornerstone of what Acknowledge to Action stands for today. This is officially the 7th Veteran Power Hour show since the debut show on December 17th, just a couple months ago. I really appreciate the feedback and support I've been getting from friends, family, the community. We have a lot of great guests lined up over the next few weeks, so please stay tuned. If you're a return listener, I really appreciate you having you back. If you're a first-time listener, I appreciate you being here. And in the Veteran Power Hour, this is a podcast that connects the veteran community through direct interviews, talking points, and various means of entertainment, which is a great way for us to connect and really talk about what it is, what it means to be a veteran, and to share our experiences in a safe, fun, entertaining, and interesting way. So that is what this represents. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to adapt. I really like the process so far as how the show is evolving to give some good content and to share some great stories here. I believe I mentioned last week that the Veteran Power Hour is officially on Facebook. So if you type in Veteran Power Hour on Facebook, it will bring up the page, and that will give you access to all the podcasts to date. It will also have some additional content that is a little easier, is more accessible, hyperlinks and information that may have been presented during the respective interview. Thank you for your service portion of the show. It is on Apple Podcasts. You may already know that because that's where you listen to this podcast, but it is definitely accessible on Apple Podcasts in addition to Google Podcasts. I think that's what they call it. So it's getting pushed out there. It is accessible, and that is a core theme of the Veteran Power Hour, having access to information and resources, particularly the Veteran Power Hour here. Eventually, I do plan on having a website, so we don't have to rely on Facebook or supplemental means where you could go directly to the web link, whatever that may be. I'm not sure what that's going to be yet. Primary production is through Montco Radio, and this gets broadcasted 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Montco Radio. So if you have the opportunity to listen to it in the moment from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., please do. We are going to go back to a live format, depending on what the accessibility is of guests and who we're going to be interviewing on the show, or it'll be continued to be in the format of us, the guests and I, meeting online virtually so we could get the interview recorded to make it accessible. But the intent and the goal is to have a portion of this show in a live format. And then obviously it gets recorded into the podcast where you're listening to it and accessing it. So just please keep that in mind. Have a great show here today. It's going to go a little bit over an hour. And actually my introduction today with the podcast was a little bit different that you may have heard if you did listen to it on Montco Radio or earlier today. That'd be great if you did. If you listened to this twice, that's pretty awesome. But I really had to cut it short with the Montco Radio because the interview went close to an hour. It was great. And some of the highlight themes of the thank you for your service portion was situation, opportunity, and action. And what do I mean by that? JT, who our guest is going to be, great story he had to share. And as I thought about it and processed what we talked about for that hour in our conversation, was how JT recognized his situation, he turned it into opportunity and took action to help him achieve and accomplish where he's at today. And it really speaks to his character, what he's done, and the amazing organization that he started, Consequence of Habit, which he's going to share all about. It's a great organization, and I really highly encourage you to go to the Consequence of Habit website. Just type in Consequence of Habit, and you'll find his website there. A lot of amazing podcasts there, and that's how we linked up. We connected through our network, and he provided me some support and some guidance, and I asked him if I could just interview him and hear his veteran experience, and to just really hear from him directly what motivated him and helped him create this amazing organization, which you will hear about here shortly. Also, what we talked about in our conversation, it really exemplifies the power of a veteran network and how we could come together and empower one another. It's just really awesome that we do that and we have those access points. So big shout out to JT and everyone who's been supporting the Veteran Power Hour so far, because that's what it's about. It's really about us coming together and helping each other out and sharing resources and inspiring and motivating one another. And also too, this conversation we had, really, his story and his journey really characterizes the hopeful wanderer piece that I've talked about and referenced since the start of the Veteran Power Hour show. It really speaks to that and how we journey, we wander, and there's so many different ways and words we could use to try to understand our process and our journey and what it really means to be a veteran. I also want to share a resource and another source of information that I got through JT and through Consequence of Habit. And that was listening to his podcast, his second to last podcast that he had with Nick Lavery. He is an active duty Green Beret, and I think it was last week or the week prior, so within the last 2 weeks, his book was released called Objective Secure. Amazing book. I mean, I'm only 20 pages into it, but I highly recommend it. Really an awesome read so far, and his story is just amazing. So go to Consequence of Habit and listen to that podcast so you could hear Nick Lavery's story and to learn more about this book, because I'm just getting into it, and it's a great read so far. And I just wanted to highlight a piece from that book that I saw, that I read so far. And Nick speaks to about how time is such a precious resource and it's limited to us all, which is absolutely true. And that's something I spoke about a few weeks ago in the podcast, and how I thank everyone for their time and how precious and how resourceful it is. So it was really cool and motivating to see that in the book too. So just sharing that resources out, it's about empowering veterans, one another, getting the word out there, because there is a lot of information out there and things can get lost in translation sometimes, or it just, we barely skim the surface on some things. So that's what this represents too, sharing some resources as well. And I'll get that on Facebook, so direct access to that in the web link. One more thing before we go into the thank you for your service portion of today's Veteran Power Hour. It's in the form of a piece of entertainment, a movie clip, which I hope really sets the tone for what you're about to hear for the next 50 or so minutes, okay?
Not who I am, what I do, that defines me.
Bruce?
Okay, that was from Batman Begins. Not only is it a great trilogy, I'm a big Hans Zimmer fan of the musical score, but I truly believe it does set the tone. It's really our actions define us. There's a lot behind our uniform that we wear. There's a lot of layers that we have, and it's a huge identity piece. It's a huge identity piece being a veteran, but there's so much more to being a veteran, and I hope that's what these conversations bring out, and we get to share with each other and then we could go on to share with our friends and family. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. I look forward to staying connected and enjoy the thank you for your service portion of today's Veteran Power Hour. Welcome to the thank you for your service portion of today's Veteran Power Hour. I'm really excited to have a conversation with our featured guest today. His name is JT. JT, thanks for being here.
Man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Well, this is great because when we connected about a month ago, I really appreciate you reaching out through me, through our networks, and just the conversations we had has been really incredibly supportive, and I'm very appreciative of that because I'm now just entering the podcast world, and we'll get into your story here shortly because you got an amazing backstory and what you've created with Consequence of Habit, sneak preview, folks. But I just really appreciate that to just have this opportunity to connect, and also you're a fellow Air Force guy,
I am.
so I'm really excited to do that. So thank you, I appreciate this. And we talked a little bit before we started the show here, and you got a understanding of what the thank you for your service portion represents, and what the overall Veteran Power Hour, what we're doing here at Montgomery County Community College on Montco Radio. And it's really to truly highlight the veteran and truly thank them for their service. And really take a deeper dive into what our military service and what it means to be a veteran. Because a lot of times we just skim the surface.
Yeah.
So having this opportunity just to talk is I really have fun doing this, and I really appreciate you being here. So,
well, first off, it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the offer. And anytime we can connect, I mean, just geographically we're close. So, one great thing that this area has is a pretty strong veteran network. So, to have somebody else who's a veteran, Air Force veteran at that, and then
nice.
is in the podcast world, man, I'm stoked for it.
Cool. Well, we got to the first question, right? What branch of service, were you in? We got that Air Force. So were you active duty? Were you reserves? Were you guard?
I was active duty. So I went in, I'm old, just so everyone knows. I went in 95, and I got out in 2000. So I was just in 4 years in, God, I forget exactly. I mean, I didn't even forget how long. Yeah, I got in just after I tried going to college, and it didn't work out for me. I mean, matter of fact, it went terrible pretty quickly. So I dropped out of college, went right into the Air Force, and I got out not knowing that we were entering a really precarious time as far as military service goes. But yeah. Well,
I was going to ask you, what was the motivation for joining the Air Force? What was there? I know you said college, and that's not very uncommon because it's I think when we're 17, 18, we're supposed to have it all figured out. We're supposed to have everything mapped out, but a lot of times we don't. And I've talked about in previous episodes, it's very difficult to meet ourselves where we're at and identify. And a lot of times, when we do that, the military is an option for that. So were there other motivators? Why the Air Force? How did the Air Force find you, or did you find the Air Force?
So my dad and my grandfather were both in the Air Force. Not that was the driving factor for me, but first to get into the reasons of why I went in, I would love to say it was like, hey, I felt like it was my duty to serve my country. That was something that grew more after I was in. But at the time, I was just struggling. I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life. The military for me was a way to move in a positive direction, but still it was an alternative to going to college or just going right into the workforce, right? Like I was going to learn something. I was going to experience things. It was looked at, like the optics of it was a positive thing. So it was, I don't want to say it was buying time because that gives my time in disservice. But early on when I first went in, that was probably more like I don't know what else to do with myself, and this seems like it's a viable option that won't be shunned by everyone around me. And then as far as the Air Force goes, I looked around a couple different places. I went because all the recruiters are around the same place. And I talked to a couple different recruiters, and my Uncle Jim had said something to me once, and he was a Army colonel, West Point instructor, just a stellar military career. And he said, so you think about going in enlisted? And I said, yeah, Uncle Jim. He goes, and he said, some words of advice, playing war. I might be butchering this. Now this is obviously pre 9/11, but playing war gets old. So just think about that too. Like, the idea of a kid going in the military and what that's going to look like, and then the reality over time, right? Yeah. So I thought the Air Force option was good, that if I wanted to do things that were deemed gung-ho, there were opportunities. You know, there were certain groups within those communities. And then if I wanted to learn something a little more technical, then that was always an option too.
Yeah. And well, where was home for you? So you mentioned college and all that. So where was home? Like where were you living?
Sure.
Because a lot of times, I got to be honest, sometimes I forget to ask that. I really we really start to get going. But one thing I always forget is like, hey, where was home for you? Like, where was home for you before you went off to service?
So I graduated high school from, I was living in the Poconos in PA.
Okay.
Up near a place called Lake Wallenpaupack.
Yeah.
Graduated from Lake Wallenpaupack High School. And I was going to school in Scranton at this now let me say this. I was a terrible student. Like, I was ADHD. I struggled through school. I really had a hard time with it. So I get out of high school, barely. And then I go off to a Penn State. One of the things I could get into was one of those little satellite campuses. Yeah. So I was going to Penn State Worthington up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which was about 45 minutes from where I was living. But I was staying on, I wouldn't say on campus because there really wasn't much of one, but I was staying in an apartment in Scranton. And that's where I was living when I ended up enlisting. I was on delayed enlistment, I want to say for 6 months or so. So I had moved down to Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And my sister was going to school at East Stroudsburg, and I was just crashing in an apartment, working at a bike shop. I grew up working at bike shops. I was working at a bike shop down in Stroudsburg until I went off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's what's I really, it's really great having these conversations, because the backstory is just as interesting as the military experience sometimes as it is. And that's really amazing how you're able to identify that, because it's challenging to do, because just from the little bit you told me, like you recognized you had to do something, and it happened to be military service in the Air Force, and it gave you time to process.
Yeah.
Because I could absolutely relate. You know, I was a late bloomer in a lot of ways myself too, but I knew I had to go into the military, and it happened to be the Air Force as well. So I hear what you're saying, and I truly believe a lot of our listeners do too.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really cool to hear that, because we need that environment to just process, figure things out, or however we want to, conceptualize that.
Yeah. Yeah. My idea behind it is, obviously it's changed quite a bit. I'm still in a job where I protect and serve, but it was, and I wonder, I'm curious if I'd gone through that same process post 9/11, how different, just what it would have felt like, because at the time, we're talking, like I said, 95, you're going in, let me redo my math. I was in 5 years and 3 months. It just hit me. I went in 95, 2000. But the thought process now, like the consequences, they're a lot more severe than what were anticipated going in the military in 95.
Oh yeah. The mid 90s were a whole different set of circumstances, and it wasn't even honestly on our radar. Post 9/11 obviously changed the whole script.
Yeah, 100%.
So again, I'm really excited to do this. I finally get to say, what was your AFSC? Air Force, because I've been using MOSs for my previous guests. So AFSC, Air Force, we like to be special. So it's our Air Force Specialty Code. So what was your job in the Air Force?
Well, I went in, here I am talking up the Air Force, saying you can do some really gung-ho stuff or some technical stuff where I didn't really do one of those, but I went in, I thought I was going in for this is how old I am. If you're an Air Force person, I went in as security police, right? Before it was security forces.
Yep.
And I went in, I thought that I was going to be doing law enforcement. I was going to be on the LE side because at the time, these two things were split. One was LE and one was security. And the security side did the more like weapon storage, flight line stuff.
Protecting aircraft and assets and all that.
And I'm like, I'd rather do the more law enforcement. And unbeknownst to me, that's not. They said no, you got switched. You're doing the security side. And so yeah, I went in security police. Went to tech school. Started off in San Antonio. And then went on to, they don't do it there anymore, but at the time you went to like an air base ground defense school in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did, San Antonio, Lackland Air Force Base is the standard where everyone goes. It's the gateway to the Air Force. Yeah. If you're going the enlisted route for basic training. And there's also some tech schools there. So that's where you were there for your basic training. And then eventually your AFSC training.
Half of it was there.
Oh, half of it. Okay.
And then the other half was at Fort Dix. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And now I think it's like joint base with McGuire and Fort Dix.
Yeah. So. Yeah. At the time we were just on the Army side, they had some old Army barracks they threw us up in. And I mean, you did, I don't want to offend, I think some Army guys would be mad if I said this, but you did some, quasi Army, you did some more Army kind of stuff. You went on a bivouac, like you did some stuff. And then, I'm off to my first station, which was Minot Air Force Base.
Oh, nice. I was just going to ask you. So, but before we go there, it's like, trust me, the Army loves to take our slaps at us. I know I was stationed at Eielson Air Force Base, and the neighboring post was Fort Wainwright, and we used to call it Fort Ain't Right.
Yeah, right.
So it's a good, it's a camaraderie piece. It's fun to poke fun at one another. So,
yeah.
So you said your first duty station was where?
Minot, North Dakota.
Oh, geez. Some bases have nicknames. I heard somebody called it mine rot, because it's a tough duty station from what I heard. Oh, well, let's hear it. That's just from what I heard.
Sure.
But it'd be great to hear your experience.
I think it would depend on what, well, I'll say this. It was the first place I went to, so it's what I knew. I mean, the weather sucks, right? The weather's really, really bad. And I worked the missile fields there. So I don't know what it's like now, but we're still, it's the 90s. We're still coming off the Cold War. It's declassified and it's pretty common knowledge, and things have changed since then, I think. But at one point, if North Dakota was its own country, it would have been like the third largest leader in nukes. Like it was. It's quick to the story, the arsenal. That's huge. So I was out there guarding those. Which was interesting, but it's like a snapshot in people's lives. Like I'm 19, I'm 20 years old. You're around people like some of your best friends. Mm-hmm. The circumstances can be not great, but you'll still make some of the best memories I have are from being stationed at Minot, North Dakota. So if I'd been at a different part of my life, like later on, I certainly want to go there with a family. But yeah, I had a blast, man. I had a blast.
Yeah, and I imagine, and I'm speaking from my experience here as well, I imagine because of that, you said you were 19, 20, so you're just really starting off.
As a kid.
Yeah, as a kid. So those are like the golden age years of college time, right?
Sure.
So, that experience was almost like those 4 years of college years that, you hear individuals, our age, because we're very close, we're similar in age, talk about, I remember, getting to, my sophomore college year. Yeah. But for us, it's more like, man, I remember my first duty station. You were there for how many years were you there?
I think it was there about 2 years, about two and a half ish.
Okay, yeah. So your freshman and sophomore year, arguably, right, in the Air Force, right, and then I just share that because I think that's why it's so formidable and so memorable, because it's such a unique experience. You're going from the state of Pennsylvania to North Dakota, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh wow, and not only that, you just had all this amazing training, this formal training, and here you are, and that it's a lifetime of memories.
Yeah, 100%. And just geographically, it's a unique place. I'd never seen a place so flat. I'd never seen a place with so few trees.
Yeah.
It was different. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I've wondered, like, if I was actually in college, if I look back to how fond my time in North Dakota in the middle of the winter was, like, I can only imagine somebody who's, I don't know, some amazing college campus, like with all these parties going
like
on,
USC or something like that.
Yeah. But I probably wouldn't have made it. It's a good thing they sent me to North Dakota, like, keep me out of trouble.
Same thing. I needed that structure. I was not equipped for open-ended college campus lifestyle.
No.
So I could absolutely relate and understand. So North Dakota, and I wanted to say this too. I imagine being in, especially on the winter and those the weather and the challenging environment. Actually, I think kind of helps with forming those relationships. Because if you're, like, say, stationed in Hawaii, or everyone's off doing their own thing, and you make their buddies. But I'm making an assumption here, again, a little bit based off my experience. But being in those harsher environments, you were in a position to form those memorable, lifetime, long-term relationships.
Yeah, you go through. I mean, I wasn't in during combat, and this is no way of comparing those two at all. But I do know anytime you're through an experience that may be looked at is unpleasant, or has potential to be unpleasant, that builds a connection, right? Like, you kind of have the shared purpose, and you're doing the same thing, and you go through these same things, and you're going to build a camaraderie. And to this day, I have some of my best friends from those from Minot.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's I always like going down memory lane with stuff like that. It's really cool to hear those experiences, because I'm connecting with veterans and having these thank you for your service interviews. There's definitely a common theme, but there's always something very unique, particular to the individual. And I think that's what's so great about this, because it's like, man, I hear you saying I can relate, but hearing your unique experience is, that's JT's.
Yeah.
So that's what's really fun about this.
Yeah, for sure.
So you were there like two years, right? Mm-hmm. So where else did the Air Force take you? Stateside, internationally?
Yeah, so even I was an airman basic when I got my first TDY.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a last minute thing at the time. We were.
That's not even no stripes on your sleeve, right?
Nothing. Nothing. I went to Khobar Towers. The bombing at Khobar Towers had just happened.
Okay.
And in Saudi Arabia. So somebody had gotten deployed. There was an emergency. They had to come home. So that was my first. They first sent me to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
And I was there only a short period of time. And then they sent me to, I've heard it a couple different ways, Al Jaber, Kuwait.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was there in 96.
Okay.
But it wasn't a very long TDY. And then after my next actual duty station, I was in Incirlik, Turkey for,
oh, nice,
I think 15 months.
Okay.
And then after that, I was at McClellan Air Force Base, which is out in it's no longer around. It was out in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, wow. So I imagine looking back, 5 years seems like a snapshot almost in some ways, but you're almost in, 3 different countries: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Turkey. You're stateside at North Dakota, and then eventually you finished out your Air Force career out in California.
I did. I'd cross trained, so I tried to cross train. I'd extended my orders to cross train. I was tried out for combat control, got injured at the training, so they sent me back to Sacramento, and I was like, I just going to finish my time out. I finished my time out in Sacramento, and I actually stayed out there for a bit when I got out.
You did? Okay. That's interesting. So what I mentioned in previous episodes is a lot of times we enter the hopeful wander phase. I like to call it the hopeful wander phase, because it's like you were there in California for X amount of time, and then you found your way back. So where was home then for you once? How did that journey?
Yeah, this is we're gonna go down a rabbit hole here. So you mentioned like needing structure, right? Like you needed structure. And that's been my story from the time I was a little kid. So I went, I get out in 95. I stay out in California. I blew some opportunities. I had a job lined up with the Department of Energy. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. It was the same kind of stuff I did in the military. And this was out in like Livermore, California, Livermore Laboratories. So I thought all these opportunities were going to come my way. And I very quickly found that that's not true. I thought I'd been cured of kind of my ADHD of like not needing structure. And that the Air Force had taught me the discipline and everything I needed to navigate life. And I had it figured out. I was mistaken. I kind of self-destructed for a short period of time. I worked a lot of different construction jobs. I did tiling for a while. I did landscaping jobs. I ended up just doing blue collar. And I mean, I worked hard, but I also was lost, man. Like I was, you're talking about identity of being in the military, and then that's gone. Because in the military, I excelled. I did well. And I thought that was going to translate to the civilian side, but without that structure in place and the accountability in place, I didn't do well. So I stayed out there for maybe a year and a half.
Oh wow, okay, yeah. That's a significant amount of time, especially.
Yeah. But it was, I joke around. I talk about it was kind of my lost year because I was bouncing around. Yeah. There's a guy who probably listened to this, one or two that I've crashed on their couches because I didn't really have, a set place for a while where I was living. I was kind of just bouncing around doing whatever I could to get by and was really just going down, heading in the wrong direction, like suffering. Yeah. Without knowing it in real time on how bad the separation from the military was affecting me.
That's really interesting you bring that up because I know when we transition into what you've established in the organization you have, you got a lot of great information on what you've done with Consequence of Habit. And I think it touches upon that. Yeah. But, again, as a fellow veteran and that too, we don't know. We think the grass is greener on the other side, and we could throw out all sorts of cliches, sure. Right? But we don't know. And you said something really interesting, like you didn't know in real time. Yeah. Like in hindsight, it's always easy to analyze and, be our own Monday morning quarterback, if you will. But I it's the transition. And that was some of the motivation I had with this. Like I was there in my own way in some ways, like as, hopeless wanderer, and I wanted to flip the script as for hopeful wanderer. Yeah. And it sounds like you were there in your own way as far as like, hey, I'm wandering, but I go back to the original quote that I started that kind of set the tone for the Veteran Power Hour. And it's like, not all those who wander are lost. And it was by Tolkien, the great writer who wrote Lord of the Rings and then The Hobbit. And he was a World War II veteran. I'm sure the fact check, it's World War I and World War II. I'm sorry, fact checkers, if you're out there. But his story is amazing. And I reflect on that a lot, and it's like, hey, I'm allowed to wander to figure out things, but there's no timeline for that. But when you're in the moment, and it's tough. Yeah. And it's okay to acknowledge that.
I don't even think I realized how bad I was screwing up. And to be, completely honest, I consider myself fortunate that some of the repercussions weren't as bad because, I'm a firm believer you become what you surround yourself with. You're in the military and you surround yourself with the right people, you're going to excel, right? There's a standard. Yeah. And I didn't practice that when I got out. And I was not doing well. And I came back east. I flew back east for a wedding. Okay. And a good buddy of mine, Matt, was getting married and he lived in Annapolis. I was home for a week. And I was around positive people, doing good things that like cared for me. And it's what I needed. That was the medicine I needed that I'm like, I'm not doing well. I need to make some massive changes in my life. I got on a plane. I flew back to California. I sold everything I had, which wasn't much. I packed up a Jeep Wrangler. Well, I think I sold the back seat. Did I have back seats? I don't think I had back seats for it. I think I sold the back. I had nothing. Everything I owned fit in a Jeep Wrangler, to include my dog. And I left. I left town. Like I got rid of everything, collected anyone who owed me any money, and then just got on the road and left.
Yeah.
And that was, I got home the day before. So this would have been December 23rd, 2001.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when you say back home, it was that in the Pocono area region?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think it's 2001. Yeah. So I was at the time, I just went home. Like I went to where, when my mom was living, stayed there for a bit until I got, working construction, came back with nothing, right? I had no plan, came back, started working construction jobs for a bit. And then until I scored a job working as a forest ranger for, DCNR, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting how we come to terms with ourselves. Sometimes it's by accident and sometimes it's intentional.
Yeah.
And it's just, and hearing these stories, it is motivating and encouraging because there's a lot of people out there like that experience that in the moment now. We hope they have an access point to this to listen, but hearing these stories and hearing your story, JT, it gives them hope, and it's like, hey, it's going to be all right. I'm going to get through this, but it's okay to be lost in translation.
Yeah. And
it's so critical to acknowledge, but that's hard. I mean, it's easier said than done. Like last week's podcast on a previous version, we talked about leadership a little bit, and leadership is easy to talk about. It's a whole different to put into practice.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to put into practice. And same thing with acknowledging and being truly in tune with ourselves.
Yeah, it's just be like mindfulness is to be mindful of what you're doing in the moment and understanding like that period of time between like a stimulus and an action to realize like, all right, I'm doing this because I'm feeling this certain way, and like be able to stop yourself in that time. And I wasn't mature enough. I mean, like you talked about being a late bloomer. I was a very late bloomer.
Yeah.
I wasn't mature enough at the time to realize the direction I was heading. And this has happened a couple of times in my life where I have a glimpse of clarity. Mm-hmm. And that week at that wedding was that glimpse of clarity for me to realize like you're messing up.
Yeah.
You got to do something, and you got to do something drastic, and it's you better start doing it tomorrow. And that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's, again, I say thanks a lot. I mean, this is the thank you for your service portion. So I say it half jokingly. I say thanks a lot, but no, thank you for sharing that, because it's really important. It helps you, identify how you got here and inventory and all that stuff. Because I'd like to ask you one more question regarding your military service.
Absolutely.
And then I really look forward to transitioning into talking about the organization you started. So what would the current JT say to the then JT just entering the U.S. Air Force?
I would say, and I think that everyone can say this, that you have no idea how special the moments are when you're living them. Right. Mm-hmm. So it would be some gratitude towards that. And then realizing that how unique some of your experiences that you're having are. I mean, I remember being overseas at times and like looking around like, how the hell did I get myself here? Yeah. Like looking, just being in such a strange place, but not having the gratitude during that to understand how unique that experience is. And really soak it in a little bit more. Yeah, that would be my message for me going in. Would be like, dude, you're about to start a journey, and it's going to be an exciting one. You need to try and you need to try and appreciate and really take it all in as you go. Yeah.
Well, as the saying goes, this probably is not the most coolest thing to put it. Is like take time and smell the roses. Or
yeah,
whatever.
That saying? For like, sure.
Hey, take it all in instead of just breezing through that environment, just like inventorying where we're at in the moment. That takes discipline. That takes, and honestly, if we don't have a mentor to tell, and when I was 18, 19, somebody would tell me, I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, dude, and I would just go about it. But at the same time, I look back on it and I'm like, wow, yeah, there's a lot of value in that.
And there's times when it's not fun, but I think there's a lot of people that have gone through, they say like embrace the suck. They've gone through And there's a lot of people like, dude, this guy was in the Air Force in the mid '90s. Like, he has no idea what the suck is. So, and you're listen, you're all right, but at the same time, the times when you're in and it's not fun, are the times that most people look back and realize that those are the times where they've, with friction comes growth, and with friction comes connection with the people around you. And I think that's universally, when I talk to people, they look back at those times with a nostalgia that you never thought you would have while going through it. Yeah, no,
these are great talking points, and it definitely gives me something to think about and reflect on, because it really helps put our experiences into a different perspective, through a different lens.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks. So, I want to transition. Like when we connected about a little over a month ago, I was immediately thankful for that. And then as I learned more about the organization you established, I was like, wow, this is really great. I look forward to this opportunity to learn more, and then to eventually do what we're doing today.
Sure.
So can you please tell us about the organization you started, The Consequence of Habit, and what's its purpose?
Sure. So the title says it's Consequence of Habit. Like, what is it we do on a habitual basis? Mm-hmm. And is it something that adds value to your life, or is it something that kind of compromises you from being the person like you could be, whether that be the father, mother, a son, like anything that you think of yourself as, right? So I can say, as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a first responder, all of these things, I found that there were some bad habits I had that were compromising me. Mm-hmm. They were really holding me back, and they had been for a long time. And for me, that had to do with alcohol, right? So the Air Force taught me a lot of great things. I said you become what you surround yourself with. And when I was in, I surrounded myself with people who like to party. Yeah. And I think that's a really common thing within these communities. And I look back and I have some great fond memories. But some people at a point in their life, they just stop living that way, right? They go, all right, this is no longer for me. Other people, when they lose identity of being in those communities, but they still have some of the bad habits. They really struggle, right? And then they start self-medicating, they start doing things to feel good. And I realized that, just like I said, I came to a crossroads in my life at that wedding. I came to a crossroads in my life where I'm like, I got to make a change. Okay. I'm doing stuff that really, it's not healthy. It's not conducive to being this idea of what I wanted to be. So I need to start making some changes. So for me, that was I quit drinking, and I did that through like a 12-step kind of program. And about a year after that, like, I'm looking back and I'm going, man, my life has gotten exponentially better. There's a lot less drama in my life. Let me start exploring this. And I had this studio that we're sitting in right now. And I came down here one night, everybody had gone to bed, and I just hit record, and I started this thing, Consequence of Habit. I just started talking about it. Yeah. I started talking about my life, my journey, my habits, the consequences, and exploring them. Hey man, I'm going to make some changes. These are the things I've done. These are the things I'm going to continue to try and do. And that grew pretty fast, and people started tuning in. I don't tailor it just for the veteran and first responder community, but I know those communities well. Yeah. And I can identify with them, and I understand them. So I started inviting other people on from those communities. I've had all kinds of different people come on, tell their stories of great habits, things that have been that helped them become super successful. Other ones that are, the opposite, like people that have come very close to death because of their habits, or they've been suffering with PTSD, or TBIs, and all of these things blend together. If you're struggling in one way, whether it be depression or anything around the issues with your mental health, self-medicating comes quick. Yeah. And it's really common for these. I had a lot of them come on and tell their story of their experiences, changes they made in their life, and the positive effects that they've had because of change. Yeah. So about a year into doing that podcast. That was a weekly podcast. And I had everything from professional athletes to, entrepreneurs to all kinds of different people come on. About a year into that, I was like, man, we got some great content here. And I've had the honor of talking to some amazing people, but how can we synthesize this information and do something more? More than, and I don't want to downplay and say, hey, like, it's just these people telling their stories, because that's what this is about, right? It's a platform.
Yeah.
But let's actually hold events. And so that's what the idea that kind of sparked Consequence of a Habit as a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
And anyone who's gone through that process will know that it's not easy. It's kind of daunting.
Yeah.
It's time consuming. It costs money. But we did everything to build that. And now we're up and running. We've got, we're just starting to get some support from some great organizations, to include the Patriot Fund, and Athletic Brewing, which is an absolutely amazing craft non-alcohol beer company, which has been part of my journey from the very beginning. They've been awesome. And we're doing programs, man. We got one coming up here soon.
It's almost like you had a sneak preview to these questions. At least we ran into one that's really awesome and incredibly motivating, because I want to, ask you this question, but, I want to share. I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm processing a lot right now as what you just shared, because it's really great, amazing stuff. So what are some, you mentioned it, what are some of the other things Consequence of Habit is doing in addition to the podcast? I know you have an event coming up. We briefly talked about it, but it'd be really great to hear more, so our audience could.
Sure. So the first event that we are holding, it's going to be a mindfulness, meditation, and movement workshop. And this is specifically designed for first responders and active duty and veterans.
Okay.
So active duty military and veterans. One of the hosts is a retired Navy SEAL commander, John McCaskill. John's been involved in some of the missions that everyone, they've been highly publicized. People will know about.
Yeah.
If you saw the movie Lone Survivor. And he struggled. He struggled like a lot of veterans do. Some of his best friends didn't make it. So he went through a really dark period. And it was through mindfulness and meditation that kind of really helped him out of his dark places. And Dr. Teresa Larson, she was on the podcast here. Was in the Marines, had dealt with some of her own struggles along the way, and it's been fantastic in helping people, especially veterans, dealing with physical. She's a physical therapist. Yeah. And she's been fantastic in helping people. So she's going to come in and help with the movement thing. And this is going to be down in not on the Dover Air Force Base. This is going to be a building just about a half mile from Dover. And we're going to bring in veterans, first responders. We're going to teach them about mindfulness, about meditation, and about the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
A lot of people in these communities, there's alternatives to alternative ways to dealing with trauma and stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're seeing more and more people open-minded to these alternatives, because we realize that maybe just, not to say that medication can't be a part of this, but there's other things we can do, right? Like, we just can't throw pills at things, and
it shouldn't be a one-stop shop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or one size fits all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's going to be April 5th down in Dover. To register, you would go to consequenceofhabit.org, and we have a registration there. It's free of charge. We're flying these people in from Colorado. We're really, we're really excited about this. I foresee this being the first of other events throughout the year that are going to be specifically for the veteran community. On top of that, we're doing other events that are not veteran specific, but we're going to have we're hoping 4 to 5 different, just very veteran specific events.
Oh, wow. That's great. And I'm happy to share that link out. And absolutely, because I Veteran Power Hour doesn't have a website yet, so I'm using I like to call it the Facebook machine, right? So it has all the podcasts. It would definitely have our conversation on it today, and I will absolutely put that on there so people have that access point.
That'd be great.
And speaking of access, I like using that a lot, access and accountability, because it sounds like what you're doing with this event on April 5th, right?
Correct.
Is giving veterans and first responders access to wellness, whole health, et cetera. I mean, there's so many great ways to put it, because I believe just human beings in nature, we want to hold people accountable the best way possible. We want to see, I think it's good to see when we want to see people get better and succeed and all that. So that's why I like to say access and accountability.
Yeah.
And for individuals, whether we're a first responder, a veteran, or anything beyond, a human being in general, we all have our hard times, we have our tough times, and we need tools in our toolbox. But more importantly, or just as important, is we need somebody to tell us how to use those tools, those overwhelming tools, so we could manage our challenges and identify those habits that we want to create. So to stop a particular habit that is very not beneficial to us. And on the flip side of that, it's like, okay, yeah, I know that's a problem, but what do I want to replace it with? What is it that I see myself doing? So I just
I know you're dead on. You're dead on, and I think if there's any positives to the struggles that veterans have gone through is we realize that there is a natural response to trauma and stress.
Yeah.
And this idea of sucking it up has a time and a place. In the military, you talk, hey, suck it up.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in a combat zone, you're going to need to suck it up. Like there's,
that's not the moment to take pause and process.
You don't start meditating that, right? Like but at the same time, there's a shelf life to that, and you have to understand that you need ways to work through those things, and that true courage. Yeah, and I believe this, man. That true courage is facing some of the demons that you have and face them head on, man. And if whatever tools you need to make that happen, you deserve it for yourself. Your family deserves it. Yeah, everyone around you deserves it. It's an investment in you, and but it's bigger than you. You're part of something bigger than just you. There's a lot of people that look up to you that need you around. So let's figure out how to help each other, get each other in a healthier place. And we deserve it to as a service to our veterans, right? Yeah. And our first responders, like they deserve it.
No, absolutely. And over the years, while I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up,
you and me both,
we have to manage a particular situation or it will manage us.
Yes.
And having, so like with all the training, we've done respectively in our own ways in the Air Force and what you're doing as a first responder, it's all those reps. It's all that like sports is a good metaphor with that, because it's like it's really cool to talk about sports and reps and all that other stuff. But actually, when it comes to play the game and produce and deliver, you're not thinking about it, because the time to deliver and deal with it and manage a particular situation, you don't have time to think about it. It just comes naturally. Yeah. And I think, with wellness training, and it's a different shift, because we go from a model of like, suck it up, just deal with it. And then when it's time to get into that, I'll say it, like touchy-feely stuff. It's like, oh, it's uncharted territory. Oh, don't go there. Yeah. No, but we have to. And as, like you said, as it's a responsibility of ourselves. So whether we're identifying it first or whatnot. So I say that because this is truly an amazing resource to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a tool that people could put in their toolbox, because there's so much information out there. I get it, and I acknowledge it's overwhelming. But when we find those sources and it's something we could hang on to, this is, an April 5th event like this is something we could just, wander, this is a perfect hopeful wanderer, GPS coordinate to put it on their map. Yeah.
100%. And I encourage everybody, we're filling up quick. So if you want to sign up, then I encourage you to do it, because, the room holds 75, right? So and we fully expect to be at max capacity. Even if you're curious, man, I promise you, there's going to be, Dr. Teresa Larson's going to be doing some stuff around movement. You think you're a badass? Come join us, because she's going to push you. Like I said, this isn't just, we're not sitting around in Birkenstocks and crisscross applesauce smelling like patchouli oil, and like there's going to be some work being done. Yeah. And And I think there's gonna be a lot of positive things that come from it.
No, that's great. I'm like I said, I keep saying thank you, and I'm excited to hear this because it is motivating because it's an uphill battle. It seems like in a lot of ways, and I will, I'll say this about like human behavior in general is it's predictably unpredictable.
Yeah.
And we have to, and that goes for ourselves internally. You know, yeah, we should have a general understanding of what we're capable of and what our trigger points are and whatnot. But, you know, in the behavioral therapy or behavioral psychology, there's the simple ABCs, right? There's the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. And that wasn't by design. So maybe that was by design, because when I saw a consequence of habit, I'm like, wow, that speaks to the ABCs, because we have to identify. What's great about the ABCs is helps us identify behavior we want to modify or increase, you know, decrease because it's not productive, or increase because there's value to it.
Yeah.
And there's always a trigger to that. There's an antecedent that's prompting a certain behavior that's undesirable, and it leads to a particular consequence.
Sure, yeah.
And on the flip side of the coin is like, okay, what's the antecedent for me to go to a wellness? Like the behavior is I want to engage in these mindfulness things. So the consequence, it gives me it eases my mind and helps me manage life.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be linked to a particular one set trauma. I mean, that could be it. But, you know, like I'm speaking more for myself. It's like, hey, I can't really pinpoint what's going on right now. All I know is my behavior is I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm thinking too much, or I need something to curb that.
Yes.
So I just those are thoughts I've been having as I've been listening, as we've been talking.
Yeah. And that's what I think it's all about is I want everybody to know, I know we're short on time here, but I want everybody to realize that if you're suffering, and suffering is different, man. Some people say, I feel depressed. Some people seek out behavior that makes them feel good short term. Mm-hmm. If you're doing that on a regular basis, whatever that is, man, there's a million poisons out there. So whatever it is you're chasing, be curious about that.
Yeah. When
you see it in your fellow brothers and sisters, be curious in that and realize that if somebody's suffering, that's not a weakness. I compare this to altitude sickness. Everyone can go up the same mountain, and at different points, people are going to get altitude sick.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to experience altitude sickness. No one will say push through that, right? Because we know it's not safe.
Yeah.
And it can potentially be deadly.
So I'm not getting oxygen to my brain. Oh, keep going.
Keep going, right? So
you may have altitude sickness for your tongue.
Yeah, right. But genetically, some people will be able to go further. But what we all have in common, at some point we reach a limit where we can't continue to go because it becomes too much. Now, the person who got it lower, it had nothing to do with toughness. It had nothing to do with it. They couldn't handle it. It's just, it's the wiring.
Yeah.
So
it's in some basic physiology, things are in different places, and it's just how
it's chemicals, it's everything. So just accepting that and showing some empathy and this whole thing. We're supposed to look out for each other, and that's what we're here to do. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, more great feedback, and just really, this is great stimulating dialogue based off these talking points. Is there anything else you would like to share and highlight?
Well, I'll say this, that this is the veteran power hour, but at the same time that we have other events. If somebody is a veteran and they're struggling, if they're having a hard time with any type of substance misuse, that we are going to be holding events around substance misuse issues as well. We're also looking to start a team consequence of habit. So if somebody's has suffered, whatever it is, substance misuse issues, mental health, but is now on a path where they're doing something athletic, they're doing something like they got a race coming up. We're taking applications starting very soon to start helping support some of those people and their endeavors, as long as they understand that there's a responsibility to bring others with you. Anything we do here, it's if you're heading in the right direction, it's your responsibility to grab as many people and bring them with you, right? Because that's what this whole thing is about. That's
great. Just so you've heard it here, it's a access point.
Yeah,
to just really get some tools in your toolbox and to just be in the moment with yourself. So that's great. That's really awesome. I keep saying this, like, oh, this is my favorite question, but with everything we talked about, again, incredibly motivating, very encouraging. I always close out with the thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Portion of this as a a thank you, but also what song, because we're building a playlist, because music is incredibly powerful, and for me, and I think for most, I think music is a universal language and helps us ground ourselves out, right?
Yeah.
So what song do you want to dedicate to the Veteran Power Hour, and what is the significance of the song to you?
I'm going to go with the Avett Brothers, Head Full of Doubt, Road Full of Promise.
Mm-hmm.
Just even the title alone kind of speaks to, I think, my own experiences. Just kind of doubting what I was capable of. But I found out when you start facing some of your issues, start facing some of your problems, again, it's friction. It adds growth, and you have no idea what you're capable of. But the real courage is to be able to not just say it to yourself, but to maybe say it to someone you really trust.
Yeah.
That I need to make some change, and that stuff's not easy. So I'm gonna go with that. Head full of doubt, road full of promise.
Well, I appreciate that. And on a closing note, again, thank you. And for everyone listening, Consequence of Habit, you have a lot of great podcasts. I got to admit, I'm only about 2 into it because I'm getting caught up. But from the 2 I've listened have been amazing. So just another access point to hear points of views. So please go there, check it out. Show your support, because it absolutely, this is an amazing organization, and I appreciate the time here today, JT, and take care, and know that you're always welcome at the Veteran Power Hour here for us to collaborate, connect, because this truly is a collaborative teamwork to take care of one another and to take care of our veteran brothers and sisters, first responders, and their families.
Awesome, brother. I really appreciate the invite, man. Thank you, brother.
A special thank you to JT Frank for staying connected over the past few years and for being a continued source of inspiration. His insights from this conversation played a key role in shaping the mission of Acknowledge to Action, fueling the podcast's goal of offering resources, support, understanding, and guidance to veterans and their families. For upcoming events, visit Consequence of a Habit's website. This includes the event on October 5th, 2024, featuring keynote speaker Nick Lavery, a current Green Beret, instructor, consultant, and best-selling author of Objective Secure. He is the first above-the-knee amputee to return to full mission Special Operations Forces status. Additional speakers include Ben Monette, a former Green Beret turned mental health advocate, personal trainer, and executive consultant, as well as Joey Bowen, an entrepreneur, community builder, and co-founder of Few Will Hunt. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others who might benefit. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more inspiring stories and insights. Wherever you are on your journey, you are not alone, and know the journey doesn't end here. Keep pushing forward, stay connected to your community, and always strive to build strong, authentic relationships. Until next time, stay safe, be well, keep moving forward with the power of Acknowledge to Action. This is the Acknowledge to Action podcast.